So we've heard about investment and grant giving in the space. So it does conclude a lot of the conversation from investors. And I want to shift gears a little bit into a conversation between seasoned entrepreneurs. What we're going to hear, who we're going to hear from is especially special. Scott Duffy, who you may have seen as MC at our Adult Learning Summit yesterday at Relay GSE, is founder and CEO at Chorus. Before that, he built what eventually became CBS Sports, Fox Sports, NBC Internet, and then finally sold his company to Richard Branson. He is in a conversation with Akshay Chaturvedi, founder and CEO of Leverage Edu, a Series C stage company that is in addition to him building Fly Finance, is supporting this global trend of helping those in the developing world be credentialized in the developed world. Gentlemen, the conversation's yours.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, welcome to all of you. I'm really excited that you're here with us to chat about my favorite topic around education, which is democratizing access to higher education. And I think that you're the perfect person for us to really lean into to have this conversation. You grew up in a small town in India, and that was a major inspiration for you and this topic. Can you share a little bit about your background?
Sure, Scott, of course, and glad to be here in this room at Times Square. And I've always been really inspired by two trends in my life, given we're talking about a mega trend. A, education, and B, migration. I think education is the only way you can break across societal classes. I grew up in a house which had a single room, and I knew the only way I could get out of that is by studying really hard, working really hard, falling in love with what I do. And I knew that the only way I can kind of write a destiny outside the zip code I'm born in is by trying to migrate to another place. So I had deep fascination for both of these trends in my early life. And I was lucky that my parents migrated to a larger city, and their biggest dream in life was that I should be able to speak in English. So every time I'm having a chat
so
like
your parents' biggest dream for you was that you would be able to speak English.
So every time I'm having a chat like this, I'm fulfilling their very small/large dreams. I spoke to them this morning and they said, you're going to be speaking, we're so proud of you. So for me, it's not a very big deal, but for them, every time I'm speaking in English, they just feel so proud. And
so cool. Yeah.
That's where I come from. And that tells you about the aspiration and the ambition and the dream that people have, which are very small, but that's our only way out. That's the only way out. And as I kind of moved on further, because I love these trends, I joined a student organization called ISEC, where I did a lot of this, where I helped students in India get to places all across the world and hosted a lot of students from all across the world into my little home. And I think that's how I kind of fell in love with what I do.
Yeah, I remember you sharing with me what it was like to actually go to school when your parents migrated to a bigger city, and there were people that were coming up in big cars and things like that. And can you just explain or share with us kind of what that was like?
So interesting you touched that. I think a lot of aspiration gets built in those small moments in life where where you sometimes feel intimidated, where you feel vulnerable. And I think that's where the mission kind of starts coming into place. So for me, I knew that my parents are making a lot of sacrifices. The only air conditioner in my house is in my room. The only computer that we could essentially gather, all different parts assembled up. The cheapest form of computer that we could make was essentially so that I could kind of learn how to code. So he always had this big weight of sacrifices I was very well aware of that my parents are making. And I think that just kind of puts that if you sometimes see there are people who work hard and there are people who work that extra hard. I think people who work that extra incremental hard are people who essentially have that weight of expectations, who remember where they come from in a very strong way.
And you wanted to pass this gift along to other people, other students that wanted to migrate out of whatever circumstance that they were in and find a path to college. So can you share kind of how that developed inside of you and in terms of a business too?
Yeah, sure. So when I was 17, I joined this organization, like I said, ISEC. And ISEC was this so-called large youth organization that would help students move from developing world to the developed world, something that Jason was speaking about just a few minutes back. And I did about 1,000 kids from India, Southeast Asia to places in the US, UK, large parts of the Western European world. And as a result, I also, like I said, I hosted about 100 plus kids in my home. And at the age of 19, without ever being in a plane, I had not, the first time I ever sat in a plane was at the age of 22.
That must have been one fun home.
So I was hosting all these interesting kids, Canadian, Mexican, Chinese, and I became very international in my head. I kind of started to realize that so much is possible if you cross borders, so much is possible if you understand about different cultures, and can I essentially extrapolate this to a business? And as a kind of, I did consulting for a fair bit after that, and I realized that there are people in different parts of the world, this is mostly in China back in the day, where you have businesses built around helping people achieve their dreams, get to higher education institutions of their choice. And I think that just kind of started to build the idea of leverage very early on in my head.
And were you going outside of India at this time, or were you just bringing people into India at this time?
It was a mix of both. When I was volunteering with ISEC, it was 1,000 kids all over, 100 kids at home. But yeah, today what we do at Leverage is mostly helping kids in emerging economies like India, Nigeria, Ghana, Tanzania, large parts of Southeast Asia, Middle East, get to universities in the developed world. So primarily the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and the Western Europe.
So you have this vision, and you also had a really unique experience with DFJ.
Yep.
And we've talked a lot about not just entrepreneurship, but also investing this week. So can you share kind of how you made that happen in that experience?
No, so interesting again. When in 1998, 99, when the whole dot-com thing was happening in the US, I was a small 8-year-old kid. We used to kind of fantasize about one day being in Silicon Valley. So between 1999 to 2009, between the age of 9 and 19, I have written thousands of cold emails to a lot of people in the US saying that one fine day I want to be in the Valley. In 2011, I ended up writing a fanboy email to a partner at DFJ called Heidi Roizen, saying that I would love for you to mentor me. And she's like, hey, you know what, I'm super busy, but you seem like a nice guy, so I'll give you 5 minutes of my time every single month. I was like, okay, I'll write to you every single 15th of the month. And she spoke about this a couple of years back when she was addressing a YC cohort. And she said she never thought somebody would eventually follow up every single 15th. And that's what I did. I wrote to her every single 15th. And because of that, because of the kind of questions I asked her, we gradually built a beautiful relationship. I'm going to be seeing her in SF in the next couple of days. And one fine day in 2014 end, she said, you always wanted to be in Silicon Valley. There's this fellowship that Tim Draper of DFJ has started. They're going to be getting 25 kids from all across the world here in Silicon Valley for a few months. Why don't you do this? And that's how I landed on a plane and came to America for the first time.
Wow. And then was this the start of Leverage Edu?
Yep.
Yeah. So did they write the first check for you? Is that?
They wrote a non-dilutive $10,000 to me, which I was able to stretch for a long time in my life at that point of time.
Awesome. And can you share with everybody, what is Leverage Edu? Yeah.
So we're a platform that is helping students get to universities all across the world. And over time, we realized that we can really help them with other things that they need across the entire journey. So about 2.5 years back, we started doing loans, financing as you call it in the US. This year, we're doing about $120 million in education loans. We realized we could also do tuition payment. So we're now doing about $15 million worth in tuition payment every single month. And about 10 months back, we realized that we could also do accommodation. So today, about 2,000 plus kids in the last few months have found a house near the university they essentially want to stay at, want to study at short-term accommodation for about 12 months. And the last thing that we've done last week, which I would love to speak about, is a lot of kids, especially from emerging economies, when they move to a new country, they're very homesick because they don't find their own food. So we've started a small food aggregator service on top of our entire app to say that you'll be homesick in the first 4 to 6 weeks before you figure out how to make your own food, or before you kind of get accustomed to the cold food in the US. So we'll kind of take care of that.
Get accustomed to the cold food in the US? Is that what you said?
I said that purposefully, yeah.
Interesting. That's so interesting. So today, you guys, if I understand correctly, you're the largest platform, international platform for students in the world.
For students coming from India, going into US and UK right now.
Oh, that's wonderful. How many people are on the platform?
Today we get about 120 million unique users on the platform every single year. And we also have the largest community of international students on our app. So about 8,000 different posts, comments, reactions every single day. And through that, we have a lot of these students who raise up their hand and say, you know what, I want to study medicine in Russia. I want to study computer science in the US. I want to study sports in Australia. I want to study photosynthesis in Scotland. I want to study winemaking in New York.
And how can you continue to use this app and this community to democratize education?
You realize, Scott, and I'm not just kind of talking about India, but most emerging economies, that you ideally either, our education systems are not very well developed right now. So in India, you will have a lot of universities, but you will have a set of 50, 60 universities, which are right at the top. And then you have about 40 million people who need higher education. And similar things in Nigeria, Southeast Asia, parts of Middle East as well. So the only way for this person to be able to build a good life for themselves is sometimes to cross the border, hop onto the developed world, and be able to kind of build a better life for their family back home.
And do you have plans of expanding more into the United States? What does that future look like for you?
So that's why we raised money in the US over the summer. And we got a bunch of really cool US-based shareholders, namely ETS and Surelight, and I have them on my board now. And a large part of, we built a team of about 250 people in the last 3 months to exclusively focus on Indian, Vietnamese, and Nigerian students in the US.
How do students measure success overseas, the success or the failure of their education? What does that look like to them?
No, success is easy, and I've spoken about this before. While we are at an education conference, I really think degrees are useless. I think they're bullshit. I don't think anybody cares about having a degree pasted on their living room wall. Everybody cares about an outcome at the other side of it. And at least for an international student, an outcome means a job, a real job at the end of things, which will pay back for your financing, which will pay back for all the loans that you might have taken from your relatives, which will take care of your family back home as well. So going to a place which has the right, like in the US, you have OPT, in Australia, Canada, UK, you have the post-study work visa. So making sure you have those policies in place, and then ensuring you go to a place where you will be able to find the right job, I think that's very important. So if you have a job that pays for all of those things for the next foreseeable 2, 3, 4 years in your life, I think that's a successful outcome in my view.
So have you thought about bringing employers onto the app, or how can you, what's the vision for how you can help?
It's part of the vision to also grapple into jobs one fine day. Also, it's a massive responsibility. So we'll think about when we finally do it. But you're right, we'll be able to really help our students end to end when we finally launch jobs on the platform, though I think that's a couple of years away right now.
And so in addition to expanding here, like, are you looking for partnerships? Are you looking for, what are the most important things that you need in this country in order for Leverage to expand and grow?
So because of the help of our partners, we already have bouquet of universities we are sending students to from India, Nigeria, and Vietnam over the last few months. What we're looking for now is, for example, I showed you, in fact, I don't mind using this opportunity to flaunt it. So we're launching this card for students who come from emerging economies. If they come into the US, it takes them about 2 to 3 months to open a new bank account. That's just how tedious the process is. And we are saying that, can we really go out and help you get a bank account on day one as well? So I'm right now, this week, speaking to banks, speaking to a bunch of finance providers, saying that, hey, can I really help you access customers who are really going to come into your country and spend a lot? They're going to take their first auto loan, first home loan, all of those things. So I get you a really interesting customer set. And at the same time, you help my students by recognizing their credibility back home in their country and giving them a debit card and other financial services on top of that.
I want to come back to this question about the education and the experience of the community leading to a job. So how can you work with corporations, or is there an ask for corporations to work with Leverage in order to provide a more direct path from a student's education and their qualification to a job?
That's a brilliant question, Scott, and I think that's where I really end up agreeing with your vision about future of education as well. So we've been working with many universities where universities and employers are coming together and launching programs for students. So this could be in the area of nursing, this could be in the area of carpentry, this could also be in the area of, we've spoken about media and computer science and telecom and whatnot. If AT&T wants to recruit 1,000 new people, can they really partner with the University Midwest and say that in Texas, I'm going to set up this college very, very specifically for people who are going to be recruited by us over the next 2 years and run this like a employment-driven academy. I think this is pretty much the future of how students would also want to look at their international education.
Yeah, I think the opportunity to build a pipeline for companies that are looking to hire is pretty awesome and pretty unique. And are you doing things like that in the UK or Nigeria or these other countries that you are working in?
So we've just started our small pilot with NHS, where we are training young girls in southern India for their exams that are needed to kind of apply for being a nurse in the UK. And I'll let you know the pilot success rates over the summers next year. But I think that's going to be very fantastic. That's the first experiment into letting students, rather than applying to a straightforward educational institution, letting them essentially applying to something which is a combination and that directly leads into employment for them very, very successfully and very fast.
Interesting. And you shared with us the card that you're working on to help people with their finances when they go to a new country. Are there any other programs or any other ways you help them to move money around? Yeah.
So what you, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience might have, at least immigrants would have heard about Capital One and a bunch of these providers. I think when you use your, whoever kind of gives you your first ever financing, you tend to kind of live with it for a very long time in your life. Sometimes people carry those cards for the rest of their lives. And there's a massive opportunity for these players in developed world, be it the US, UK, elsewhere, to tap into this immigrant who's going to be just kind of welcomed into this financial ecosystem one fine day. And it's very new to them, it's very fresh for them. So we have seen right now that once we open this, we call this Forex back home, international remittance. Once we open this channel for them, students tend to use the channel to send money back home as well. And then parents also use this channel to kind of send money back to the students. So eventually it becomes a platform where a lot of activity is happening across borders, and people tend to use it for other things that they need as well.
So the platform has community, it has recommendations, loans, there's the card. You guys are working on housing. Can you explain just a little bit more how the housing part works? Yeah.
So as soon as a student gets an offer from a university, so typically on the Leverage platform, a student would apply to say 4 to 5 universities. They would get offers from these universities. Once I submit what I call a deposit to a university, which is a 10% fee to reserve my seat in that place. Once I have an offer letter, the platform very beautifully says that now you're going to this university, these are the 4 different accommodation options which are close to this university. And that's a supply that we have mapped on the other side. So without any incremental effort from your side, as soon as you made a deposit to the university and you're sure about going to this place, accommodation kind of falls right after. You don't have to really go on the street and figure out, okay, how do I figure out accommodation now? It falls right through. And that's the idea of doing everything on one platform. It's very margin accretive for us as a company from a financial perspective, flows directly into margin pools. At the same time, for the student, it's all at one place. It's one-stop shop to take care of all my needs.
And then do you take like a transaction fee on all of this? Is that kind of how it works?
That's correct.
So would the payment to the person providing the housing, would that go through your platform?
It goes through our platform.
So that actually goes through the platform,
Correct.
and then you get a piece of that. Interesting. What else is it that international students want when coming here to the United States that maybe as educators we could do a better job of thinking about or considering or providing? Yeah.
I think more people are focused on a very practical training. I think and I think US specifically has done a great job. I would have called it out as is if it wasn't the case. But I think US, comparative to other countries, has done a great job in terms of revising its curriculum over the last 10 years. So a lot of practical components already added to it. For example, if I want to become a chef, it makes a lot of sense for me to be in and around schools in New York, which are really going to give me on-the-spot training. If I want to be in media, it makes a lot of sense for me to go to USC and actually work out of a film studio as well. And similar things for a lot of people who want to study physics and really be at a rocket factory and actually see how SpaceX is kind of going about and doing things. So I think for international students, more specifically, who are coming from all over the world, this practical exposure really adds a lot of value to them. So universities who aren't really doing this right now should hop onto it and be able to kind of improve their experience.
Do you find that the majority of students that are coming to the United States internationally for their education, is their intention to stay, or do they want to go back home with that education, that job?
Their intention is to stay at least for a period of 2 to 5 years because international education is relatively expensive. So they want to pay back their loans. That said, there's a lot of economic activity happening, as you know, in the eastern side of the world right now. There's a lot happening in India. 10 years back, somebody who was coming to the US would have wanted to stay here, but today they can get near about the same salary, near about the same kind of ecosystem back home in Delhi, Bangalore, Bombay as well, or in Singapore, or in Tokyo, or in other parts of that world. So I think now what we're seeing over the last few years, more specifically, is that people want to work for a couple of years, get that flavor of working in the Western world, somewhere in New York, somewhere in SF, somewhere in London, somewhere in Munich or Milan or wherever that is, and then essentially return back to the Eastern world, where it could be in Dubai, it could be in Abu Dhabi, it could be in Singapore, or it could be somewhere in India.
And do you guys, are you doing this now, are you considering helping them to actually get the requirements or the documents or whatever they need in order to stay? Because that in itself can be pretty confusing or hard for a student. Yeah.
We work with a bunch of, more specifically for the US, I know that's where the question is coming from. Yeah. We aggregate a bunch of immigration lawyers who can help them with some of these things, but we don't do it by ourselves right now. But you're right, that's such an important service.
Interesting. So is there anything else that you guys are doing at Leverage that we should all know that can help to really democratize and give more people, particularly in emerging economies, access to quality education?
I think, Scott, the most important part really is at the root of it. Can we match make really well? And the way we do it, we have a team of about, and it's a mix of technology and human intervention. We have 1,200 people back home. And of these, about 750 people are counselors. We do about 200,000 counselings every single month.
Wow.
We do a free 30-minute counseling for every single person who wants to essentially engage with us and figure out whether it is right for them or not. What I feel particularly important is the idea of matchmaking. For example, I'll give you an example. There's a place called Andheri in Mumbai. And if a student is calling us from Andheri, we will tell them, you know what, basis your profile, there were about 20 people or 25 people who went from Andheri last year to a place called Colchester, which is about 2 hours away from London, at a university called University of Essex. And they took a $25,000 loan, and they were able to repay that loan in about 3.5 years. And of these people, 16 got a job, 14 are still without a job because they didn't work hard for it. Of the 16 people, 8 are working at ARM, which is a SoftBank funded company in the chip space, putting chips in robots. 4 are working in accounting, 3 are working in the government, blah, blah, blah. And this is the kind of average package that they get. So when a student is really able to visualize their life in that form and have absolute clarity about what their life could look like for the next 3-4 years, I think that's when they build trust into a platform like ours. So even though we are helping them get to college, we aren't really essentially just helping them get to college. We're trying to kind of build them a map for their career per se.
That's awesome. You guys, a big hand for Akshay, Leverage Edu.
Thanks, Scott. Really enjoyed this.